Awesome. Well, welcome everybody to week number 3. And we're, Peter and I are very happy again, of course, to be here and sharing innovation and creativity and all those things with you. So a real quick review. Last week and the week before, I talked a lot about the entrepreneurial mindset. And I wanted to make sure that you all realize that many of you already have many of these traits that we see in entrepreneurs. And just briefly, entrepreneurs take ownership of their lives. They have pretty strong goals, self-directed, very highly engaged. They have an optimistic interpretation of events, usually. And they are lifelong knowledge seekers, which being librarians, that's a sure given. And a high degree of follow-through, being focused. And humanistic outlook is important, really wanting to do something to help people. And so, again, all of you have so many of those traits. We talked about the innovation engine, which is based on a book, which I hope someday you'll dive into. It's really a fun book called Ingenious by Tina Seelig, and all about the how to look at innovation and what it's composed of. And then last we talked about start with why concept that Simon Sinek has had out there for a while now, and very interesting on how to get to the real guts, of why you're doing something, of why a library exists, for instance, et cetera. So moving right along, I'm going to start with a whole presentation on ideas. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. That there's going to be portions of it where you're going to think of some ideas yourself. It's pretty self-explanatory. So here we go. First of all, again, everyone is creative. It's something, it's a skill that you can enhance your creativity, but everyone basically has creativity. It takes some practice. It's kind of complex. It can be influenced by many factors. Individuals practice it, groups practice it. I'm sure you've been in some groups yourself where they've been much more at ease coming up with ideas and that type of thing. So I want to talk about outside the box. What does that really mean? Back, several years ago at the University of Wisconsin, there was a psychology professor who did an experiment, and it was an idea generation exercise, and he literally put some students in a 5-foot by 5-foot box, okay, and had them think about the ideas and come up with ideas. And then he had the other set of students be out, not in the box, okay. And at the end, the students outside the box came up with more ideas, like 25% more. So that literally was the instigator of outside the box at some psychology professor. The other thing about creativity is it's dynamic, and you can do a lot of movement and get more ideas flowing. And there's this old saying, on one hand is this and on the other hand is this. And that actually came from, again, from an experiment that a psychologist was doing about literally holding out your arm and your hand and thinking about ideas. And then step number 2, alternate, holding out your hand and then your other hand, and keep doing that. And the people that were doing alternating came up with more ideas. So that's on the one hand and the other hand. So outside the box, a lot of you've heard that before, but these are things that are associated with it, getting wild and crazy, imagining new possibilities, finding novel solutions, leaving your comfort zone, and moving beyond your fears, disrupting the status quo. disruption is always part of it. But if we keep doing the same old way of thinking, we're going to come with usually the same old results, or sort of like is a cyclic effect. So we want to get out of that mode. So there's several creative processes that have been developed throughout the years. Design thinking is one of them. We'll do later. Here's another one. And Peter, I'm sure you're familiar with some of these. And the de Bono's thinking hats is a very interesting way of looking at different ways of thinking, and then associating that with a color. And so people in a group can put on a hat that means you're in fact-finding mode, and that's the white hat. Or you can put on a hat that's yellow, and that's your optimism, being, thinking optimism. We don't have time today to go through all that, but you can look that up. So we've got some barriers to creative thinking. And when you're in your comfort zone, it's kind of hard to get out of that. But the first one is negativity bias. And all of us do this. We usually are looking kind of for the first things that might go wrong. It's almost a safety factor for us. Oh dear, okay. So these are some examples of people thinking, that in a negative mode. You've probably heard some of these before. Stocks have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. Yeah, right, back in 1929. This is, we don't like their sound, and their guitar music's on the way out. Way back in 63, Decca Records rejected the Beatles. So they missed out on that. There's no reason anyone would ever want a computer in your home. Forget it. That's Ken Olsen, CEO of DEC, back in 77, saying that. The concept is interesting and well-formed, but in order to earn better than a C, the idea must be feasible. This is a Yale University professor rejecting Fred Smith's paper about reliable overnight delivery. And of course, Fred went on to create the Federal Express. So these is just examples of kind of that negatively coming into the forefront and what happens. So the whole thing is that there really is no box. So what is really limiting us in coming up with new things? And it's really all about a brainstem. And we call this sort of the gator brain, which is a simplistic way of looking at it, but it's a real part of your brain, right above your neck. The gator brain, the basic objective is to survive. And so when you're faced with new ideas, the gator brain will either attack them, and this is also a survival thing. It's just almost subconscious. We'll run away, maybe ignore it, or freeze, give no reply. We've all been there. We've all done this. So the good news is we also have the other parts of the brain. And remember, we talked about this with this start with why, the golden circle. And Simon Sinek had his interpretation of the limbic and the neocortex. The cortex being executive thinking, analytics, capacity for language. And remember, the limbic was emotions. It's interesting. So we can get more out of those parts of the brain if there's this ways of doing that. So you just need to build your creativity muscle. And that's what we're going to do today, just briefly. So first and foremost, you really know that you are creative. Everybody is. And that all challenges are solvable, sometimes in the short run, sometimes in the long run. There's different ways of thinking. And when we're in groups, we've got to be cognizant of that. We have people that are more into being clarifiers. We have ideators, people seeing the big picture. And we have developer, always want to evaluate and optimize, improve. And then, of course, the implementer, let's get to the action, these people. So, and actually, the awareness of different thinking styles really helps when you're in teams, and it helps it will build more productive teams. It builds collaboration. Oh, what happened there? Sorry about that. Okay, so again, these are the types of people we're going to have in our groups. We've got the clarifier who's gathering data, clarifying the challenge, the ideator generating ideas, the developer kind of, selecting, strengthening solutions, and then of course the implementer at the end. And we've all been in groups that we recognize that there's ways of thinking that people have. So I want to talk just briefly about point, and point is something that I use to remember how to get things going, how to be more collaborative with groups. And this is, point is for, the P is for pluses, talking about, I like that, being optimistic. O is for opportunities. Let's look at this, and we might also do this. And I is for issues, how to phrase questions that people will be more willing to answer. And then new thinking, sort of thinking about, well, what if we do this, or that sort of thing. So the phrases that are helpful in generating ideas, again, are like, well, how might we do this? In what ways might we do that, etc. So I have to myself be conscious of that when I'm in a group and we're trying to come up with a new way of doing things. So if you do that and you get your mind above that sort of gator brain who wants to shut it down, and I don't want to go there, but if you're thinking more about how to phrase things, it really helps upshift and kind of learning first for what you like in an idea. The difference between I can't afford it and how might I afford it? Psychologically, when we have a fact like that and we're saying, well, I can't afford it, your brain automatically keeps wanting to justify that. Once it's a fact, and keeps like, okay, right. So it's sort of interesting. So rephrasing it helps. Or how might I generate extra income to afford it? Just another way of looking at it. Or in what ways might I get help in paying for it? All those are, bringing your brain up to a better mood, you can almost say, of tackling things. So these are, I just threw these out as kind of in the some of the issues you have in the library world. How might we do this? Who might we partner with, and that type of thing. So we want to invite disruption, which is, when we're idea generating, it's going to disrupt something. And but that's where the magic happens. It's really important to have a diversity of perspectives. And so you all know that in your groups, we're all aiming to have people from all areas, all walks of life, coming up with new things. Very important. And this is just, thinking about the whole groups that are having to address. All these people can be divergent thinkers thinking, again, in a different way. So, so we want to talk about always using divergent guidelines. You want to defer judgment, strive for quantity, seek wild and unusual options, and then combine and build on other options. Once you put one thing down, another thing, you think of another thing. And so this is all just building your creative muscle, so to speak. Oh, sorry. Okay. So divergent thinking means generating a large quantity. We often talk about the thirds in divergence. And so this is the first third sometimes are workable options. And then the second third are weird options. And then the third are workable weird options. So that's sort of the buckets things fall in often when you do something like this. So here's a kind of a real life example of what might be all the ways I could create a backyard fun for my neighbor's kids. And you could think, well, build a play set, create a ball field, construct a playhouse, a tree house, invent toys that put themselves away. Yeah, that would be good. Build a play set that's also a tree house and can be put away when playing ball or tag. And here's what this group came up with. And I know that looks sort of strange, but it solves a lot of the issues that they needed. It's portable, it is sort of like a tree house. You can put the toys in the top part. And anyway, so some of this can be pretty crazy. But again, we're just using our creative muscle, and it really takes practice. And sometimes you have to use time limits because some working under a little bit of stress like that accelerates maybe coming up with some ideas. So I'm going to add one more thing to the mailbox problem or opportunity. And this is forced connections. And so we're going to pick a stimulus, and I'm not going to ask you to do this. I'm just going to show you examples of it. So we're going to pick an outside stimulus unrelated to the challenge, another object, just kind of thinking about that. And make a list of attributes of what you're going to see as a totally unrelated thing to the mailbox. And for each attribute, you're going to kind of force a connection back to the original issue, which would be mailbox. And then you can repeat the same with a different object or toy. Some people do this with three different objects, but I'm just going to show one of you an example today. So here's the different object. So kind of you look at this picture. What are the 4 or 6 attributes that you notice? And I'll kind of list these for us because you sort of forget about the mailbox for a minute. To kind of think about what's all in that image. And so here's what you can come up with. I'm just going to go ahead and do this for us. So looks, you can see wet colors. You can see a stem, a dimpled surface. There's 3. There's it looks 3. One's barely showing, but 3 things. You might think fruity. You might think snug. They're kind of close together. Spheres, like circles, that sort of thing. So if you apply these to the mailbox, this is what can happen. So there's one, wet, a mailbox that washes itself during dry, dusty spells. Colorful, mailbox tattoos or appliques you can put on them. 3, a mailbox that has 3 separate compartments. Of course, your postman or woman isn't going to like, I don't know if they're going to like that. And then fruity, a mailbox that you can customize with your favorite fragrances. So that just gives you an idea of what we call forced connections. And I have one more kind of real life example to show us. And this is, this was Frito-Lay. I'm trying to think of the manufacturer of Frito-Lay. They had to come up with a new type of snack, and they have to get new products out there every so often because people get tired of the same old thing. So they wanted to generate some new ideas. So they took all the executives and management out into a development, out into a place where they were building. I think it was a complex, a huge complex with all kinds of machines. So they just took them out there and wanted to see what kind of thinking would happen, but just by witnessing this, going around looking at stuff. And so these are what they came up with. You know, after they got back and, you know, thought, okay, what are all the things that you can associate with this? And this is what they came up with. Scoops, you know, having to do with moving earth and, you know, lifting things up and that type of thing. And it was one of the most successful products that Fritos put out. So that just gives you another example of force connections. So ideas come in many different ways. There's lots of different methods to use. You always want to kind of review your objectives, of course. You know, why are we even thinking of new ideas? What's the real reason behind this? Why are we doing this? Diversity is best, diversity in your group, diversity in location and all that. And then the negative bias is a real thing that just be conscious of that. All right, so hopefully everybody can see that. So design thinking has a lot of different steps to it. Again, it's basically a process for creative problem solving. And, oh, let me get rid of this chat. I don't know, just a second. Okay, so here's kind of a definition for you to sort of anchor the whole process. And it's an iterative process that has many steps, and it's to understand the user or customer, challenge assumptions, and redefine problems to identify solutions that are not apparent in the initial level of understanding. So really, it's simply sort of digging deeper to uncover hidden secrets. It's not really new, but the widespread use of it is. And so the process was started in the 50s and 60s, but it started gaining traction with a 2008 Harvard Business School article by Tim Brown, who was then the CEO of IDEO. And so IDEO is an important organization. It was started in Palo Alto, California, right next to Stanford University. And Tim Brown and Tom Kelly were the original founders, and they're both just phenomenal people, great idea generators. And I wanted you to look at a video if you can before you came here today, and it's an interview with Tom with 2 graduate students, and it is excellent. If you haven't looked at it, I encourage you to do that, and it really gives you a feel for his thinking. And Tom is actually an anthropologist, so he brings a really different perspective to creating ideas and design thinking. And Tim's major book, well, Tom's book was The Art of Innovation. Again, it's a classic, written quite a few years ago. And Tim's book in 2009, Change by Design. Again, how design thinking really transforms organizations and inspires innovation. All this is about innovation. So these slides aren't moving. Okay, so the basics are you don't want to start on a solution until you understand the problem. And reframing the question is a key to get to an understanding. A lot of times you do this yourself, probably on a daily basis, is, well, this question, if I say it another way, I'll get a better understanding. And empathy is the key ingredient, really getting down to the the thinking behind your customer, why is your customer doing something, and to really empathize with the problem they're trying to solve. Sorry with this. I don't know what's happened with this. Okay. So why does it matter? Well, coming up with ideas is sometimes easy, although in the last exercise, maybe we thought that wasn't quite true, but it depends. It depends on a lot of different things. Coming up with the right idea takes work. It's really hard work. With design thinking, throwing out what you think you know and starting from scratch opens up all kinds of possibilities. There's 5 key actions, and the first is to empathize, and we'll do that through interviewing people, finding out what's really behind what they're thinking, and then defining what we think the problem is they're trying to solve, and then ideate, coming up with ideas on how to solve it, and then building a prototype, and then going out and testing that. So those are the 5 different steps. We won't be building a prototype today because we're on virtual, our virtual environment, but that's okay. We'll talk about it afterwards. So this is the whole process, gives you an idea of the different steps. Empathize, we'll do interviews, and then defining, again, getting to the pain points, ideate ideas, sharing ideas, and then building a prototype, and then testing this, and then going back out and seeing if it really is going to solve the problem. So I kind of put these into a library situation just to give you an idea of thinking behind maybe an issue with a library problem. And of course, I've just, you would have maybe a better one than this one, but I came up with a community problem, wanting more engagement with local influencers out there. I use the term influencers because of social media. It's such in wide use now, but local influencers can mean about anybody that's, interested in learning more. So empathize, you go out and interview residents of the community, and then define what exactly do they want, what motivates them, kind of reframing questions during the interviews. Then you'll come up with ideas, select one, and then build a simple prototype. Then you will go back out to those you interviewed with that prototype and get their feedback. And that's where you kind of make the decision whether you're going to launch this product or service, what you're going to do, or you're going to tweak it a little bit or start over. Remember the hourglass image I had where, at the bottom, you're going to plan and implement, but sometimes you have to turn it upside down and start over. Okay, so want to make sure everybody gets a chance. Yeah, for some people, this is kind of hard to do. It's, it's really asking, well, why, and why that, and why this, and but it's really necessary. And you can certainly do it in a diplomatic way, and there are ways to pose questions that are not so intimidating to other people. Okay, well, I think we'll say goodbye for now. Peter and I will be back next week, so we're looking forward to that very much. And thank you all for participating. You were great students, if you will. Okay, so thanks. See you. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Thanks for the experience. It was good.
Okay. Yep, thanks. Jocelyn, I want to thank you again for everything.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I really appreciate it. That's hard to get through without an assistant, somebody
Yeah,
helping.
no problem at all.
So
Yeah.
are you going to be running the trains next, Jocelyn? Is that what I heard?
Well, I don't actually know.
know.
I don't know how to drive a car. Do you think that's a hindrance? Like,
No.
our train's totally different.
Yes.
Maybe it'll be good. I won't have any preconceived notions about how to drive. So I'll just jump straight in.
They can't go anywhere other than on the tracks.
That's right. Yeah, that's very comforting.
So Margaret, I love the fact that you're sharing an office with the entrepreneur professor, right?
Yeah.
So can you take a photo of his bookshelf for me?
He doesn't have any print at all.
No print.
He and I collaborated though last year on a workshop for a band here, an Indigenous band. We put together a training series of how to start your own business.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, great.
And it was so interesting because we have such different perspectives on how to make that work. And it was great working with him. I really got to know him well.
Yeah.
And it surprised me in the end because he's way more concrete than I am. If
really?
he had asked me going in, I would have expected it to be the other way around.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah. Well, anyway, I will let you go. But anyway, thanks a lot. Thanks again, Jocelyn. Yeah, take
You're
care.
welcome.
Maybe next week, Michele will get to see your dog.
Oh yeah, she came in once with a big thing in her mouth. I said her. I'll bring her in next time. Because our staff meetings are online, we frequently bring our pets to staff. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay. Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks for everything, Jocelyn.
You're welcome.